Bonjour tout le monde. Hello everyone. Today I am with Mr. Michael Deluce, who is CEO. Il est le président directeur général de Porter Airlines. So you are based out of Toronto, Mr. Deluce?
That's correct.
Excellent. So should I say Mr. Deluce? Should I call you Michael?
Please call me Michael.
All right. We didn't get that part covered before we started the interview. So
Yeah.
all right. So big news. I mean, it was about a month ago that you announced these investments into Saint-Hubert Airport. So tell us a little bit behind how this came about, because obviously a project like that was not, planned over a couple of weeks. What's the bit of the history behind this unveilment that took place last month?
So we've been working with Dash L, who operates Saint-Hubert Airport, for a little more than a year, knowing that we had our significant growth plans that we've launched more recently, but announced back about 18 months ago. That really focuses on growing our existing 29 aircraft fleet of aircraft to expand to a national footprint with flights really originating out of Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, and Halifax, our core catchment area, to destinations across North America, Canada, the US, coast to coast. Montreal is a strategic market for us. We've always had a strong presence. It was one of our initial markets since 2006, operating between Billy Bishop, Toronto City Airport, and Dorval, Trudeau Airport. And as well, we offer service to Halifax. So it's been a key market for us. And as we look forward, in order to enter the Montreal marketplace in the manner that we intend to, we wanted a differentiation factor. We looked long and hard at Saint-Hubert. Obviously, it's uniquely situated in the city. Many times you have a second airport in a city, but it's very far outside of the city. And we did a very extensive study on traffic, population, economics, all around Montreal, and did drive time simulations of the entire population to each of the two airports, and looked at the relative convenience of each various parts of the population. And we think it's an attractive airport for a large chunk of the Montreal population. And what we intend to do is to implement a user-friendly, smaller footprint terminal building at Saint-Hubert that allows for time savings, but as well a very comfortable environment, much like a Billy Bishop in the passenger boarding lounges, spacious with nice concessions intermixed to really make a calming and pleasant experience on the departure.
Now you mentioned Billy Bishop, and obviously it's just the word that comes to mind is, oh, they're going to be doing another Billy Bishop, but for Montreal. But Billy Bishop is really close to Toronto versus Pearson, right? How does that play in? Can we envision that in a couple of years from now, there's going to be actually more traffic out of Saint-Hubert versus Trudeau, or both going to be coexisting for a certain period of time? How do you see this coexistence of the two airports for Porter Airlines?
So Porter will be offering service to the Montreal marketplace from both Trudeau Airport and Saint-Hubert. We've had service at Trudeau Airport since 2006, and it remains a key, important airport for us to serve. We'll offer a variety of flights from both airports, but when you look at markets like Montreal to Toronto, those are the two biggest cities in the country. It's the biggest traffic route in the country. We'll offer convenient, frequent service from both Toronto, Billy Bishop, and Pearson to both Trudeau and Saint-Hubert to really capture and optimize each of those populations for the airport that works best for travelers, which at the end of the day, certain populations or portion will prefer one airport or the other. Same in Toronto as will be the case in Montreal.
Perhaps one might be geared towards international connections versus one is more for domestic. Could it be, for example, the kind of approach, or it depends?
Absolutely. I mean, when we look at Trudeau is a wonderful international hub. We feed certain carriers, including Air Transat and Qatar, into Montreal, and they provide a tremendous amount of traffic to connect onto their international networks. And that international connectivity is an important element of an airport that Trudeau has, whereas a Saint-Hubert airport is likely to more be some regional connections from other Quebec destinations through our PASCAM partnership to domestic Canadian destinations, which would be great for the region. But on top of that, local traffic, point to point, where you want sort of an easy, seamless experience.
Yeah, and I know that in the past couple of years, at least the last 10, 15 years, there was a lot of traffic being lost from Trudeau for people going either out of Plattsburgh or Burlington. You think that might be actually, you might be getting capturing some of the clientele from the Eastern Townships and people that were actually heading a bit further out to catch flights that maybe didn't want to go to Trudeau. I mean, for price point reasons, perhaps, but also because of convenience. Is that also, did that also come into the equation when you did the thought process?
The airport will be a domestic airport,
Okay.
and will serve a broad range. We've identified at least 10 destinations coast to coast in Canada domestically that will serve. Pascan will serve an extensive network in regional Quebec, and we'll have connectivity between those two markets. But I think the point you raise, part of that is price when you see bleed over to the US for international travel. But the other is location does matter, and there is always a gravitational pull towards a closer airport if there's a convenience factor to it. And so the Montreal area, there'll be a large portion of the population that will find it more convenient to fly out of Trudeau. And there'll be also a large portion of the population that will find it convenient to fly out of Saint-Hubert Airport, much like we see in Toronto with Billy Bishop Airport and Pearson Airport. Each have large catchment areas, and the traffic gravitates towards what makes sense for the traveler. At the end of the day, that's what it's about, making sure that the traveler has a choice to use a facility that is most convenient for them.
Yeah, and you mentioned connectivity. I'd like to hear a bit more about that. It is, I wouldn't say an issue, but certainly a challenge that we're up against here in this province of how do we reach out to Ile de la Madeleine or more regional airports. The access isn't always obvious if you want to go to the Côte-Nord or you want to go to Gaspésie, different areas. So you have, I think, some plans to do some share coding with Pascan and others. How is that going to be playing in? What are your plans on that level to ensure maybe connectivity to more remote areas of the province?
We've had extensive dialogue with Pascan. We think it's a wonderful operation that serves an important need in the Quebec market, underserved markets that don't have service today are all focus markets where Pascan will grow out of Saint-Hubert Airport. And so you'll see them providing regional feed with their SAB 340s, which is a great regional aircraft for serving smaller regional communities. And we'll have an integrated schedule that feeds into our domestic operations, whether that's Toronto or Vancouver or Calgary, so that passengers can not only travel from within Quebec to Montreal, but as well onwards on the Porter network. And we'll have a code share agreement. So it'll be seamless for the customer. They can check in regional destination, bags, boarding passes, and an easy connection in Saint-Hubert. And so it really does help solve what has been a challenge in Quebec for some period of time, is the regional air access, which has been a hot topic, and really excited. Pascan is very excited about the relationship, and we think it's a great operation that they run.
Well, this will be music to the ears of many people, what we're hearing there. When there's such an announcement made, obviously there's going to be a lot of hurrahs, and I think overall it's been pretty unanimous. It's very positive. There has been one or two comments that were made in various outlets, and especially on, one actually on Tourism Express, a comment made by a citizen, I guess, of Longueuil. We're wondering, what's the acceptance? What was the feedback you got from the mayors, from the social accessibility? You know that nowadays it's a big issue across the world, really, making sure that the local communities are in agreement. So what has been the feedback since you announced that over a month ago? Is it pretty much positive in general? And if there has been some negative, how is it being addressed?
So it has been overwhelmingly positive. Dash L, the operator of the airport, extensively consulted and dialogue with both the city of Longueuil, the province of Quebec, and the federal government. All three levels of government were highly supportive and there and present at the announcement of this potential development, which really combines not only airport development, but as well a technology cluster that they intend to develop in Longueuil. So we've been very fortunate that there's been strong support, and I think that comes from the fact that this airport will be managed tightly from an aircraft noise perspective. It has reached out to the community and done a very good job with that. And on top of that, you're taking people off of roads. If you live close to Saint-Hubert, airport and you need to travel, we're taking you off the road from having to drive 40 minutes to YUL. So from a overall footprint perspective, it's a positive. When you take track miles off the road, that is a net benefit. Now, the aircraft that Porter operates, a combination of Dash 8 aircraft plus the E195 E2s, they're the most fuel efficient aircraft on the market. The E2, which is powered by Pratt & Whitney's geared turbofan engine, is the quietest and most fuel efficient narrow-body aircraft on the market. So there's a lot of reasons why this is a modern, convenient solution to a lot of issues.
Now, I believe you also ordered some Embraer in 2021. Those are the ones you're referring to?
Correct. The Embraer E195 E2 aircraft.
Yeah. So those, I mean, you purchased quite a few. That was a big order back then. So it's great to see that obviously there's a positive outlook for the airline industry. Now you're saying you'll just do domestic. Is there any possibility that in the future you might actually head towards the Caribbean or even perhaps international, or would that be only out of Montreal airport, like YUL, or for now it's basically just a domestic?
Saint-Hubert currently has restrictions that require it to have domestic-only flights. Certainly, if parties want to dialogue about, having an expanded network that included some Florida and/or sun destinations, potentially leisure destinations, I think that only enhances the overall offering to that area of Montreal, the ability to not just fly domestically, but as well other important destinations. I think the logic behind domestic flying transcends the same logic as would be to fly to Florida.
Right. Yeah, why not once you're at that point? Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. Those were most of the questions I had for you. I guess the last one I would have is, I guess, how do you see the state of the airline industry? It's 2023. This is probably the very first full year without, the pandemic sort of being around. The outlook, we're hearing inflation, the cost of energy and fuel obviously is spiking. What's your take on what we can expect for the next, I'd say, 6 to 12 months from a travel perspective? I'd like to hear you on that.
Sure. 2020 and 2021 were obviously awful airline years, driven by COVID. 2022 was a challenging year because there was a lot of volatility everywhere. Fuel prices, they were going from $5 a gallon heating oil down to $3 to $4. A lot of labor volatility as well, high inflation. And we do see all of this sort of coming more in line. And it's really the reaction to what was a couple-year shutdown of large portions of the economy, and it takes time to get the engine going again. Now, when we look at 2023, the demand outlook is extremely strong. We have a lot of pent-up demand from 2 years of people largely not being able to travel. And as you release even just a fraction of what people didn't travel each of those years into the market, it's creating a very robust demand environment driven by leisure. Business traffic is still recovering at a slower pace, but the leisure environment is very strong, both from pent-up demand, but as well potentially a permanent change to the way people work in offices with hybrid environments. It may be resulting, what we're seeing is a more permanent change in travel patterns where leisure travel has a permanent uplift. So it'll be interesting to see as 2023 unfolds, but certainly all of the indications are that this is going to be a very busy year for everyone in the industry.
Actually, I lied when I said it was my last question, because you actually you mentioned something there, and this is something I did want to ask you. You talked about leisure. And I'd be curious to hear you on sort of what's the proportion you're going to see for, you probably have some insights, or you did some projections on leisure versus business or bleisure sort of clientele that you're foreseeing out of Saint-Sebastian. Would that be also a different type of clientele that will fly out of Saint-Sebastian versus Dorval? And what's your take on that? I mean, you obviously said leisure's back. Leisure, we're hearing that business clientele is sort of slower on the uptake, although airlines in the US were saying it was a big part of their business last year. So I'd like to hear you on that last part.
I think the airport and Trudeau are both well located to serve downtown Montreal. It's flip of a coin from a distance and sort of traffic time perspective. And then ultimately it's the catchment area of each airport. Obviously there'll be a mix of business and leisure.
Right.
We'll be focused on a range of destinations. So I think it's too early to tell how the split is, and really you get that sort of robust set of data when you actually are able to pull your own travel data to see proportion of business and leisure depending on what markets you're in. So I think it's early to say, but we do anticipate a mix of both.
Right. Okay. Well, good. Well, super. Thank you for your time. And we wish you best of luck with the project in States. About when is the opening? Are we expecting to be start operation out of that airport?
So in our release a month ago, we talked about construction commencing mid 2023
Right.
with a targeted completion by the end of 2024.
Well, we wish you luck. Hopefully that'll work well, and hopefully the cost will be within what they're supposed to be, because we're hearing all sorts of the construction on all sorts of projects. It's always seems to go up by 30, 40, and 50%. But
Yeah, we're hoping for a deflationary environment over the next 18 months.
we hope for you as well. Super. Well, thank you very much for this interview, Mr. Deluce, and best of luck with the rest of the project.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.
Cheers.